everyone. Welcome to another episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale. I'm your host, Alex Cardinale. Thank you for joining me for today's installment of Storytime with Alex Cardinale. This is my second episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale, and I'm excited to share another story with you. My first story was a month ago, and it was about my high school senior prank, and it did really well. It got a lot of views, and most of you seem to enjoy my story time, so we're going to continue doing them, and it's going to be a fun series. Before we get started with today's topic, I want to wish all of you a happy Monday, and hopefully you all have a great week. It's going to be a great week for me, and I look forward to it. I've got 4 live streams this week, so I'm very excited to continue doing my awesome live streams. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about my time working at Publix as a service clerk. I started working in October of 2019, and I left Publix in August of 2020. So basically around 10 months I worked for Publix. So I'm going to tell you what it was like to work at Publix and what it was like to work at Publix during the COVID-19 pandemic, and eventually what led to me quitting Publix. Now, it was a very unique situation to work at Publix during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was very cool, in other words, to work during a pandemic as well. But what led to me leaving Publix? We'll talk about that in this video right here. So if you are tuned in live and you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments, and I will answer them during the live stream. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the comments section, and I will answer them during the live stream, and I look forward to answering your questions. Now, if you're catching the archive version of this episode, then I'll answer your questions in the comment section of YouTube. So if you have questions, I look forward to answering them. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Real Alex Cardinale, so you can catch all of my live streams, as well as my Aqua Alex Lives, which are my tropical fish live streams, and of course, Story Time with Alex Cardinale. All right, enough of that stuff. Let's get right to my story. So, in August of 2019, I moved from Western Massachusetts, more specifically Springfield, Massachusetts, to West Palm Beach, Florida. And it was a very good move. I love it here in Florida. Florida is awesome. It's a lot better than Massachusetts. I got my first job in Massachusetts. I worked at a grocery store called Big Y as a service clerk and cashier. And I got that job, I believe, in November of 2018. And I worked there all the way till July 2019 when I ended up moving to Florida. So I worked at Big Y as a cashier and a service clerk. It was a great time. I made a lot of wonderful friends, and it was a great first job. I have to say that Big Y is one of my favorite jobs, and it's up there with my current job as the best jobs that I've ever had. So when I came to Florida in August of 2019, August of 2019, I started looking for jobs. It took me 2 months until I finally landed a job. I applied at restaurants, I applied at convenience stores, I applied at grocery stores, and eventually one day I applied at Publix that was closest to my house. It was about 2 maybe 3 minutes away from me. I worked at the Publix in Village Commons on Village Boulevard in West Palm Beach, and I have to say that's a very nice store. I like that Publix. It's got a lot of interesting stuff, and it's a very unique store layout. So with that being said, I went in there, I applied, and the next day I got called in for an interview. Now, during this interview, it was a very smooth experience, and it was a wonderful interview. I was interviewed by the customer service manager at Publix. Her name was Sumatra, I believe, if I remember that correctly. And it was one of the best interviews I've ever had. I got to express myself and talk about everything that I've accomplished. And I was hired right then and there. She hired me right then and there, and I had a drug test, and I passed it. And then next week, I began working at Publix as a service clerk, and with the hopes of eventually becoming a cashier. Now, what is a service clerk, you might ask? Well, a service clerk is someone who bags your groceries, helps you take your groceries to your car and put them in your car. That's basically what a service clerk is. And eventually, most service clerks do get promoted to cashier. And that's what happened at Big Y, and that's what I wanted to happen at Publix. And you're going to find out why I ended up leaving Publix during this video. And I'm going to explain it to you as best as I can. So I got hired at Publix in October of 2019. All right, so let's talk about working at Publix prior to the pandemic. Now, working at Publix before the pandemic hit was great. I got along with the customers, and I enjoyed interacting with my coworkers, and it was all a great time. Now, I even made some friends, some personal friends from working at Publix that I talk to on a regular basis and I see on a regular basis. So that's one of the best things about working at Publix is that I made several personal friends. That's the best thing that I could take away from working at Publix prior to the pandemic. Also, the pay was really good, and I have to admit my paychecks were pretty awesome at Publix compared to my current paychecks. I really enjoy the difference, but at the same time, when you're working, you want to be happy. You want to enjoy going to work. You just don't want to go to work just for the money, because if you're not happy with the work you're doing, why are you working in the first place? And as you guys are going to find out, I wasn't happy working at Publix during the pandemic. So before the pandemic, I was bagging groceries, I was helping customers to their car, and doing everything I could to advance to where I wanted to be, which was cashier. And then eventually I wanted to be in customer service and hopefully become a customer service manager. So when I was working at Publix before the pandemic hit, I worked Thanksgiving and I stayed extra shifts. I took extra shifts during the holiday season to get noticed, get recognition, and prove that I'm a team player. During Christmas and New Year's, I continued to work extra shifts and stay overtime, which helped a little bit in me getting more hours, and eventually, hopefully, it would have led to me becoming a cashier if things didn't happen the way they did. And then after that, after the holidays, I came in on time and I did my job and I left on time. It was a really good experience. So I would say like the first half of my 10 months at Publix, I have nothing to complain about other than the custodial work that they had me doing. I didn't know when they hired me that it would entail doing custodial work like using a floor machine, cleaning the restrooms, um, putting down rugs, things like that. That was a big no-no for me. I'm not into doing custodial work unless I was hired for that purpose and paid handsomely for that purpose. That didn't happen, and that was one of the red flags that I had at Publix was you hired me as a service clerk, but you've got me cleaning restrooms using this heavy ass floor machine that I've never seen in my life and doing all this other extra work. I should be paid more for it, and you should let potential new service clerks know that they're going to be having to do custodial work as part of their job. Because had I done that, I would not have accepted the job. But beggars can't be choosers. I did enjoy the paychecks, and I did enjoy working at Publix despite the custodial work. So one day, this is before the pandemic hit, I went to one of the managers and I said, I really enjoy working here. It's a fun experience. I like the coworkers. I made several friends, but you never did inform me that I would have to do custodial work. And I don't have the best back. I do have back issues at a young age, unfortunately. But because of those back issues, I felt like I couldn't use the big floor machine anymore or put the rugs down. And I said, is there any other work I could do besides doing that? So then they had me doing the restrooms and taking out trash and putting it in the trash in the back room. So I was fine with that. I didn't mind doing that because that was easy and it was something that I could do. So from then on out, that's what I did. I cleaned the restrooms and took out the trash after my bagging shift was over. So now we're going to talk about working at Publix during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is where things started to go wrong. Now, at the beginning of 2020, the Publix at Village Commons, where I worked, oversaw many different management changes. And this is something I noticed that goes on in Publix. They are constantly changing customer service managers. I don't know if it's to make the employees realize that they're not going to have the same managers every year, or to show the employees that there is no favoritism. But that was one of the reasons that I left, is I had grown used to Sumatra as a customer service manager, and I was sure she was going to make me a cashier eventually, like she said, when I got hired. So a new manager came in. He was a young gentleman who I thought was a decent, nice man, but I don't think he liked me very much because I got fewer hours and there was always excuses when I asked for something. And one thing in particular he was very anal about was me wearing a belt. Sometimes I forgot to put on a belt and I didn't want to run late, so I would go to work without a belt. So practically one day I was warned that I would be suspended if I didn't wear a belt by the new customer service manager. And that was another red flag to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to leave this store. But then I began wearing belts and we didn't have a problem after that. So a few months go by. At the beginning of when the pandemic began, I continued doing my work as usual. And the store was very busy because people are freaking out over COVID-19 and people are buying toilet paper, cleaning supplies, and groceries in bulk. The store was really impacted. It was busy. It was like Christmas, New Year's, Easter, Thanksgiving, all thrown together. And I'm used to busy store environments because when I worked at Big Y as a cashier, one of the rival grocery stores shut down for a long time. Like a few weeks, maybe even a month, they shut down because they had a union, and they were doing what do you call that? Like uh, I can't remember what it's called at the top of my head, but they shut down because none of the workers showed up there until they got what they wanted, and they were able to reopen. But during that time, Big Y, a grocery store in Western Massachusetts, got all of their customers, and Big Y was very, very packed every day. So I worked shifts with people with customers that were coming in, and I was able to get them done. So I am very good in busy environments. I'm used to it now. So when we were busy during the pandemic, I was equally as good. I was bagging groceries and helping people to their cars and things like that. So I want to say maybe March, April of 2020, I took the new customer service manager aside, and I said, hey, when I was hired, the customer service manager that was here told me that I would be a cashier after a little while of working here. And what he said to me was kind of shocking. He said, right now, I don't think you're able to be a cashier. I'm going to give you another few months to see what you can do as a service clerk. So that was very disappointing to me, and it was very upsetting as well. I remember going home, and I had a couple days off. I was thinking, you know what, I'm just going to quit and call it even. I don't want to work at Publix no more because I've been busting my ass bagging groceries and helping customers, and I'm not getting any recognition. I'm not getting the promotion that I was told I would get after a few months. But I stuck in there because I don't like to quit things. I'm not a quitter by nature. I like to try my best at handling stuff. So a few more months of the pandemic goes on, and I notice they pull me away from customers, and I'm doing more custodial work. Now, I want to say May of 2020, during the pandemic, Publix requires a public service clerk to hand sanitize each shopping cart. And boy, when I tell you, I friggin' hated that job. That is an understatement. So I was the person who had to sanitize these shopping carts. Can you imagine standing in front of the entrance of the store with a cleaning rag and a sanitizing bottle, having to sanitize each and every cart for 6 to 8 hours for just $10 an hour? So you're basically sitting there doing nothing other than greeting customers as they come in and cleaning your carts. I did that for a few months, and I was starting to grow frustrated with Publix, and I began calling out days. I just didn't show up a few times because I ended up not liking my job anymore. So after that, they gave me a couple of shifts as a bagger again. But then, like a next week after that, it was back to the carts. So I kept doing carts until like the last week of July. And it was during that time that I figured, you know what, I'm going to start looking for other jobs. I applied for a few other places, but unfortunately didn't get hired, which is a shame because it would be a totally different story. And I'm not happy with how this outcome ended, but it is what it is. So I continued working until the end of July. I remember my last day at Publix was like July 30th, I think, and it was an 8-hour day. Six and a half hours cleaning carts, and my break was a half hour late. So that was something that made me mad as well. So I go on break, and the next thing you know, They say I'm 5 minutes past my break time, so they take me out of the break room and make me do carts an extra hour. And I got home an hour late because they made me do carts an extra hour. So you can imagine how frustrated I was. Not a fun experience at all. So that day, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to show up my next few days. Maybe they'll get the message that I'm tired of doing carts and I don't like my job. But after those few days, I was like, you know what? That's wrong of you, Alex. It's kind of immature. You should go back to work. So when I was scheduled the next week, that's exactly what I did. I went to work. Then the head customer service manager called me into his office and he said, you know, you didn't show up for a few shifts. Unfortunately, we're going to have to suspend you without pay for a week. So I got suspended without pay for a whole week. That hit me financially really hard, but I understand you're hired to do a job and they want you to show up, so you must show up when you are working. So when I was suspended for a whole week, I started thinking maybe it's time that I really do consider quitting before I get fired. Maybe it's time I find a new job. Maybe it's time for me to maybe re-enter the restaurant business or do a different profession. So at that time, I figured, you know what? I'm done working in grocery stores. I'm done being a service clerk. This is it. I'm no longer going to bag groceries or clean carts. So I went back for like a week and I continued working there. Then after that, I just totally stopped showing up. 3 or 4 weeks go by, no call, nothing. They probably didn't even know where I went. They were probably wondering what happened. So during those 3 to 4 weeks, I totally avoided that Publix. I didn't go grocery shopping at that Publix. I had nothing to do with that Publix. Now, I just simply quit. I had enough. I couldn't do it anymore. I could not see myself busting my ass, standing there for 6 to 8 hours every shift cleaning carts. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was very boring, and it does something to your brain. It made me realize that I'm worth more than this. I'm better than being somebody's bitch, basically, for $10 an hour. So basically, I decided, you know what, I'm going to quit. So like a month goes by, then the head manager of the store, the head manager who controls the entire store, called me and said, hey, Alex, what's up? We need to know if you want this job, whatever. So I think I called back and I said, I'm all done. Thank you for the opportunity to work at Publix, but you guys never fulfilled your promise of making me become a cashier. I'm done, and that was that. I just hung up after that. So that was when I quit Publix, and it was like a week before my birthday. So after I quit Publix, I had like a few months off. In December of 2020, I got hired by my current job, which is Texas Roadhouse, and I'm happily back in the restaurant business, enjoying myself. I currently work as a host. I have a lot of fun, and I make some money. Now, I'm not making as much as I made at Publix, but hey, money's money. I enjoy work. I love going to work. I love the customers, or guests as we call them. I love my coworkers there. I've got several friends from Texas Roadhouse now, and it's just a really fun experience, and I love my job. Now, at the beginning of Publix, I could have said I love my job, but as time went on, I began disliking it and even hating it. So that is what led to me quitting Publix. It was the pandemic, it was sanitizing carts, and being told I would eventually be a cashier, but it never came to fruition. So those are the 3 major reasons why I left Publix. Now, there isn't all bad things about working at Publix. I did make a good personal friend. Some of you may know him. His name is Paul Aramani. That was the highlight of working at Publix, was making a really good friend. Also, I have several other good friends. Verania, who I talk to on Facebook, Julie, Melissa, and there's a couple others that I really enjoyed. Now, there's another customer service manager who at the time was an assistant customer service manager at Publix. Her name is Kimberly, and she is the new customer service manager at my dad's Publix that my dad works at. And she is one of the best customer service managers that you can have, in my personal opinion. I did like working for Kimberly when she had a shift and I was working. I enjoyed it because she was a nice person. However, the other customer service manager, the one that replaced Sumatra, he was not so nice at all. In fact, I will go as far as to call him an asshole, because I think he treated me like I was slow. I think he treated me like I had special issues or special problems or things like that, because he would talk to me in a very condescending way. He would talk to me like I was stupid. He would talk to me very slow. And one day it got to the point where I was this close from punching him in the face. I was this close to hitting him. And I think he heard me that day. I said, "You're a fucking asshole," out loud. He turned around, looked at me, said, "I'm not going to believe I heard that." And then he walked away and went into the back office. So maybe he took note of what I said. So that's another reason of why I decided not to go back, is because I just told my manager off, and that's not going to look good for me. So my experience at Publix is definitely not a good one. If the pandemic didn't happen, maybe things would be different, but I don't know. It's hard to say. But now I'm happy I have a job that I really like now. And if you're in Southern Florida, make sure to check me out at Texas Roadhouse Southern Boulevard in West Palm Beach. I have seen several of my former coworkers that come into Texas Roadhouse from that Publix, and they all say, "We miss you. Why did you leave?" And I tell them the truth. And then they look at me and they start telling me bad things about that Publix. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that doesn't like that particular Publix as a Publix employee. But I just had the balls to just say, "You know what, no, enough's enough," and I quit. So I figured it'd be better quitting than being fired. And when I applied to jobs, I don't even include Publix in my application as work history, because I'm not proud of my experience at Publix. I'm not proud that I had to resort to quitting and all that stuff that went down. All right. So now that leads me to my final topic. Do I recommend working at Publix? And the answer to that question would be yes and no. It depends on the particular location you work for and the particular customer service manager you work for, or whatever department that you work for, whether it be helping the customers by being a service clerk or a cashier, or working in the deli department, or working in the bakery or the meat. It depends. Now, if I worked in the bakery and I baked food, I think I would have had a better experience. But because I had the experience that I had, I would personally say, if you like making money, interacting with customers, and don't mind getting your hands dirty, this would be a good job for you. Being a service clerk is a good way to make money if this is your first job. Now, I say working at Publix is a teenager job, and it's certainly not for someone older than me. And I say that because they really make you work as a service clerk. And I feel older people are going to feel worn out and they're going to feel really, really tired. So it just depends on you. Are you willing to put in the work at Publix to make that money? And just be aware, if you want a promotion, you might not get it right away. You might have to wait several months and you might never get it. So that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I was kind of all over the place with the story, but that's basically all I have for you for this episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale. I'm an open book. I tell the truth. What you see is what you get. So that's why I figured this would be a very good episode. Now, this Wednesday, July 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on Facebook Live. Also on my YouTube channel on Friday, The Real Alex Cardinale, I will be doing another episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale. And this episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale, which is live this Wednesday, July 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, I'll be telling you a very funny story that happened years ago when I was a teenager living in Massachusetts. I will tell you about a funny interaction I had at a now closed Kmart store in Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, in Kmart, in the men's clothing section, I had a confrontation with a big, huge, fat guy who was getting undressed in the Kmart section of the men's clothing. So that's all I'm going to say about that. You're going to want to tune into it. It's very funny. I think you'll enjoy it. So tune into my third episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale live this Wednesday, July 14th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. It'll be right here on Facebook Live. I'll share the links on my Facebook page, Alex Cardinale. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Real Alex Cardinale, for more live streams and awesome videos. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit a like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you on Wednesday for the next episode of Storytime with Alex Cardinale.